there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to day 3 of official Commander 2015 spoilers. So we have 14 cards to look at today, as well as the packaging for the 5 decks. So before we get started, just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed yet, good time to do so. We'll be doing spoiler videos every day the spoilers come out, and then once they release deck lists, we'll talk about the deck lists as well. So having said that, let's jump in. First, we're going to look at the packaging, and this is the first one. This is the Call of the Spirits deck with Daxos, and appears to have a spirit theme, black-white. I am very intrigued to see more cards from this deck. I feel like this one has a lot of potential to be fun, but I do want to see more from it. Next is Plunder the Graves, and this is definitely a pretty strong graveyard theme just from the cards we've seen. This is actually the first we've seen of the official commander, and we'll talk more about her in just a few moments, but I love the art on that card, which is also the art you see in the background. Next is Seize Control. This is another deck that's got me very intrigued just by seeing the pieces of it, and we definitely get some more clues to what it's going to be like today in the spoilers, but it almost feels like a quasi Storm deck. I mean, it's not really doing Storm, but it's doing things that are very similar to Storm. It's all about just huge haymaker spells, and seems like it could be a lot of fun. It's definitely a strong control deck. Next, we have Swell the Host, which is the Simic, and this is all about small creatures, lots of small creatures getting bigger and attacking in or blocking with either counters or temporary buffs on them. And finally, we have Boros Wade into Battle, and this is a very unique Boros deck. I've talked about this a little bit the last couple days. Feels like the theme here is just big creatures and slowing the game down and making it a little more grindy, which is very unusual for Boros, but I'm very intrigued by this. So do want to see more from this one as well, but this could be fun. Alright, having said that, let's move into the actual spoilers. And our first one is Bastion Protector, 1 white, 2 colorless. It's a 3/3, and it's a human soldier. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have indestructible. Pretty nice effect for a 3/3 for 3 as well. Pretty good stats on that card. So I'm assuming this is probably going to be in the Boros build, and that makes the official Boros commander even better. Could you imagine playing a double strike vigilance creature and getting the buff on top of it, and then experience counters on top of that, which also buff the commander? That's pretty awesome. So I'm assuming that's where we'll find this card, but pretty good card, good for a lot of different commander decks. Next is Grasp of Fate, and this one maybe a little less exciting for me. 2 white and a colorless. It's an enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until it leaves the battlefield. So it's kind of like a Stasis Snare effect, sort of, but it's just hitting 1 non-land permanent for each of your opponents. And it's cheap. I mean, that's kind of cool, but the only thing with this card is it's going to turn a lot of attention towards you. Again, assuming this is probably part of the Boros build, it just kind of goes along with the slowing down the game and protecting yourself in the early game. Next card comes to us from a Japanese language spoiler, and roughly translated, it's Ether Snatch, 2 blue, 4 colorless. It's an instant. Gain control of target spell. You may choose new targets for that spell. If that spell is a permanent, that permanent enters the battlefield under your control. Kind of interesting card. So obviously this looks like it's going to fit into the Izzet deck. It's all about control magic, and this is a card that truly reflects that in more than one way. It reminds me a little bit of Commandeer, which was a card in Cold Snap, which basically lets you take control of a non-creature spell and sort of redirect it like this. It also gave you a choice to pitch a couple cards and play it for free, kind of like Force of Will, sort of, but obviously not as good. But this card's interesting. I think it's not super overpowered. That I could almost see this in a standard environment. Maybe not today's standard environment, just because control is already very powerful there. But in a future environment, this doesn't seem super broken to me or anything like that. So it's an intriguing card. I love the fact that you can gain control of perhaps even just take a creature when it's cast, or else redirect damage back to permanents or to an opponent. It's just very versatile, does a lot of stuff for 6 mana at instant speed. Next we have another 2 blue, 4 colorless instant, and this is Mirror Match. Cast Mirror Match only during the Declare Blocker step. For each creature attacking you or a planeswalker you control, put a token that's a copy of that creature onto the battlefield, blocking that creature. exile those tokens at the end of combat. So again, this feels like it's in the Izzet deck. It's another just big instant kind of control-y haymaker spell. And I love the fact it's called Mirror Match, which is a term you use in Magic in general, so I think that's kind of cool that they're able to work that name in. And it's a neat card. I mean, it's definitely going to protect you. Your opponents, now obviously these are constructed decks, so if your opponent's familiar with the decks, that if you're just playing the deck out of the box, they may be prepared for this. But I think in most cases, if you just use this card and slip it into your blue commander deck, I don't think a lot of people are going to play around this. I have noticed that it seems like maybe there's one of every color, or at least one in every two colors of one of these type of kind of big surprise effects that when your opponent attacks in, you're just able to really just decimate them. And this is the one that's in the Izzet deck, apparently. Next we have Scourge of Neltoth. 2 black, 5 colorless. It's a zombie dragon, 6/6 flyer, and you may cast it from your graveyard by paying 2 black and sacrificing 2 creatures rather than paying its mana cost. So it sounds like this will be in the Golgari deck, and great card if you can get it out for the 2 black mana. Now I'm sure it's going to take a little luck. You're going to have to find a way to get it in your graveyard or kind of mill it into your graveyard, and then you'll still have to sack a couple creatures, but works well with the card we saw yesterday that potentially could give you a number of zombie tokens that you could sacrifice a couple of those to get this guy out of the graveyard as long as he's in there. Pretty good creature. It's going to do a little bit of work for you. Next card also comes from a Japanese language spoiler. It is Magus of the Wheel, 1 red, 2 colorless. It's a human wizard, 3/3, and you can pay a red and a colorless, tap and sacrifice him, and each player will discard his or her hand, then draw 7 cards. So it's basically Wheel of Fortune. So back in the Time Spiral block, they had a number of cycles of these Maguses, which were creatures that had the abilities of some of the most powerful spells in Magic's history, and this is playing off that concept a little bit, this time bringing us Wheel of Fortune, and I think that's pretty awesome. Great effect to playing Commander. This could be a lot of fun, and it doesn't necessarily make you enemies. A lot of times folks would love to have 7 new cards in their hand, so it does kind of play into the political game a little bit, but I love this. I think it's going to be part of the Izzet deck, and a very powerful part of a control deck. If a control deck can restock its hand, that's exactly where it wants to be. Next we have a card that was spoiled from a French language spoiler, roughly translated Meteor Volley. Costs 3 red and X. It's a sorcery, and it will deal 4 damage to X target creatures and or players. Again, feels like this belongs in the Izzet deck, just another big haymaker spell that can really change the board state. Next we have Mizzix Mastery. And here's another card for that Izzet deck, I'm sure. 1 red, 3 colorless. It's a sorcery. Exile target card that's an instant or sorcery from the graveyard. For each card exiled this way, copy it, and you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost, then exile Mizzix Mastery. And it has Overload for 3 red and 5 colorless. Okay, so I've been picking up on a trend here. It seems like there's these big kind of game-ending spells, probably one for each deck. They seem to be named after the actual commander in the deck, and this is definitely the one for the Izzet deck. So this is where I was saying earlier, where this is like quasi-storm. It's not spelled out storm per se, and you don't need a storm card to finish your opponents off after you play this, because hopefully you'll be able to finish the game with what's in your graveyard. So if you play this for the overload cost, every instant and sorcery in your graveyard you get to play again for free. That's insanity. So pretty awesome. In a pinch, of course, you can use this for 4 and just get 1 card back, but we know this is meant to be a big haymaker at the end of the game. Really interesting design on this one. Next we'll move on to green with Arachnogenesis. 1 green, 2 colorless. It's an instant. Put X 1/2 green spider creature tokens with reach onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures attacking you. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-spider creatures. Okay, so this card I'm pretty sure would fit into the Golgari deck, because we've already seen spider spawning, which this would go naturally with, but this doesn't necessarily feel out of the realm of possibility for Simic, because it is a lot of small creatures. The Simic is playing that game, so this could be a card that shows up in 2 decks, but I think if it's only going to be in 1, probably the Golgari deck. This is the green version of, hey, you better not attack me. So this one's a little cheaper, only costing cost of 3 total. This is pretty cool. I mean, you're going to go ahead and fog a huge attack and then get a bunch of tokens out of it. Like I said before, it works really well with spider spawning, where you can eventually just build a huge army of tokens. This is pretty neat. I really like the concept of these big swinging instants that can kind of defend you when your players are going in for that kind of lethal strike. Next we have Great Oak Guardian, 1 green, 5 colorless. It's a 4/5 with flash and reach. It's a tree folk, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until end of turn and untap them. So this feels pretty Simic to me, I think. It's just another one of those boosting your small creatures. And again, here's another copy of a card that just says, hey, you better not attack me if I got mana open. And in some ways, you're going to have to really start thinking about your attacks and Commander just in general with all these new cards in play, because there's a number of these that just really punish someone for being aggressive. And this is just another one of them. Just being able to just surprise someone when not only this is a blocker, but then all your creatures untap and get +2/+2. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. So another really big defensive spell. Next we have Verdant Confluence, 2 green, 4 colorless. It's a sorcery. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. First is put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature, or return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, or search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So we've already seen the red version of this confluence cycle. Here's a green. I don't know if we're actually going to see like every color. We'll probably just see one for each color pair, I'm assuming. This, though, feels like, again, it could fit into Golgari or Simic. The first mode there is definitely Simic. It's pumping creatures, making small creatures bigger. But then the second mode is definitely along the Golgari theme of graveyard recursion. So this might show up in both those decks. It's pretty interesting. But I do really like the design of these confluences. These are really fun cards. And I love the fact that you can just like triple up on one of the modes if you want to. We'll move on to multicolor. This is Anya, Merciless Angel, and it's Boros in 3. It's a 4/4 flyer, legendary creature angel, and she gets +3/+3 for each opponent whose life total is less than half of his or her starting life total, as long as an opponent's life total is less than half of his or her starting life total. Anya has Indestructible. So this is a nice little alternative to the suggested Boros commander, I guess. And you can switch her out, make her the commander. Do you imagine she comes in as a 7/7 indestructible flyer for 5 mana, as long as one of your opponents has less than half their life? That's pretty powerful. And I find it intriguing too, because then you kind of play this mini game of you don't want to necessarily kill off the person who's probably close to being dead. You may want to try to defend them and whittle someone else down before you finish them off, because if you do, she'll become smaller and no longer indestructible. So kind of a cool strategy and design to this card. I just find it very interesting. Next, we have Mirren of Clan Nel Toth, and she costs a Golgari in 2. She's a 3/4 legendary human shaman, and whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, choose target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. So she is the official commander for the Golgari deck, and of course she plays well with the graveyard, as you'd expect, and she's pretty strong. I like the fact that even if she doesn't have that many experience counters yet, she can still get the card back to your hand. That's not bad at all. And once she gets to the point where she's starting to put stuff directly into play, she gets pretty crazy pretty quick. So good card, really neat design for a commander. Just really enjoy the designs of all these commanders. And our last spoiler for today, it's a land, it's Command Beacon, and you can tap it for colorless mana, or you can tap and sacrifice it to put your commander into your hand from the command zone. I like these cards that are very just commander-centric. We've seen things in the past like Command Tower and stuff. Now, I might rather have something that is going to fix my mana or something along those lines, but this is cool too. Like I'm glad they designed these and that these exist. There's going to be times where this will come in handy, but for the most part, I prefer when these are more about mana fixing, color fixing, or ramp as opposed to something like this. But cool. I'm glad they're designing cards like this. So that is the story for today. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have more spoilers to look at. As always, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a good day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.